Is Crimea Ukraine or Russia? In this video, I will tell you the history of Crimea Russia doesn't want you to know. Explain who are Crimean Tatars and how Soviets deported them overnight from their homeland. And at the end of the video, I will take you with me to the Ukrainian food festival where Crimean Tatars will cook there the most iconic dish, chebureki. Let's not waste any more time. For centuries, Crimea has been at the crossroad of conflict. Russian propaganda was doing their best in trying to convince the world that Crimea is Russia and it's somehow their historical lands. However, the reality is very different. Crimean Tatars, the native people of Crimea, were brutally deported by Stalin at the end of the World War II. Their culture was erased and they were silenced for decades, still suffering under Russian occupation, and some of them are not able to come back home. And in this video, we will uncover the history of Crimea, learn more about Crimean Tatars and their culture, and at the end of the video, I will take you and we will taste the most iconic dish of Crimean Tatars, which called chebureki. The recorded history of Crimea begins at 5th century, when several Greek colonies were established and founded at their south coast. The history of Crimea as an independent state, however, begins much later, at the middle of 15th century, when at 1449, the Hasi first Chirai founded Crimean Khanate, fully supported by local population. It is worth to mention that during this time, so-called Russia didn't even exist. It was only Moscovia, the small principality around the modern-day Moscow. So at that time, this principality was weak and poor, and even Novgorod Republic remained independent during this time, when Moscow conquered it much later in 1478. Interestingly, even during the decline of Golden Horde, Russia, or Moscovia at that time, continued to pay tribute to it. It was simply too weak, and tribute was the price of survival because Moscovia couldn't even able to defend itself. Later, Moscovia realized that if they will switch the honor and stop paying tribute to Golden Horde, they can pay tribute to the Crimean Khanate, which were becoming much stronger during this time. Those are the facts which you will not hear from Russian side. And Russian supporters might shout now, "Oh no, this is lies, and this was never the case." But this is absolute true. Russia simply always wanted to erase other countries' history, so it will be easier to convince that it has been always Russia. So, who were these people who were living in Crimean Khanate, and what is the local population of Crimea? Crimean Tatars, the native people of Crimea, were living on the peninsula for centuries. During the World War II, Crimea was completely occupied by Nazi Germany, and then later liberated by Soviets.
Что ты творишь? Крыса тыловая. Я советский солдат. Уже не советский. Пошли, давай! Очисти дорогу, брать столы быстро! Шевелись! Шевелись!
Even before the liberation of Crimea by Soviets, they already had a plan for this peninsula. They wanted to do, how they call it, big cleansing of Crimea from all anti-Soviet elements. So what were those anti-Soviet elements? Well, those were Crimean Tatars themselves. After Red Army retook Crimea, one of the biggest crime against Crimean Tatars took place. The massive deportation of Crimean Tatars to Uzbekistan. Almost entire nation, around 80 to 85% of Crimean Tatars were deported from Crimea overnight. Imagine this. You're going at the morning for the groceries or to work, coming back and realizing that your family is already in the train sent somewhere far away. What makes this deportation even more horrific is that it primarily targeted elderly, women, and children, because most men were already serving in army, helping Soviets to fight Nazism. So this scale of betrayal from the government is something what only Russians are capable of. Most documents which proves this deportation was eliminated and destroyed by Russians. However, some still prevented on the lower scale at the local archives. And Ukraine was able to gain the access to those unique and limited documents before the occupation of Crimea in 2014. Crimean Tatars were forced to live in such a rush that they could take almost nothing with them, not their personal belongings, not cultural items such as jewelry or traditional clothes. The only thing which they could carry with them were their memories. Even during deportation time, Crimean Tatars were known as deeply hospitable and welcoming people who cherished and protected their culture and tradition despite all odds. As you may know, Crimean Tatars were a Muslim society, but unlike other Muslim societies at that time, where women had fewer rights, Crimean Tatars were different. Interestingly, when Crimean Tatars tried to rebuild their country in 20th century, at the beginning of 20th century, they became the first country who allowed people to vote regardless of gender. It was a super progressive step, even actually for European society. Sadly and unfortunately, the large amount of Crimean Tatar heritage was destroyed. Around 180 libraries were demolished, 25 million books burned, and around 911 cities and villages were renamed. A total Russification of Crimea by Russia and Soviets almost enabled Crimean Tatars to come back home. It was actually forbidden for them to return to Crimea even a few decades later after their deportation, when the borders were basically open. Most of the families were forbidden to buy land in Crimea if you're a Crimean Tatar, and many people were still trying to return home, settling closer in Ukraine, in Zaporizhia region, or somewhere to be at least geographically closer to home. Despite everything, Crimean Tatars were able to preserve and save bits and parts of their culture and traditions, and we can still learn about those traditions today. And the fight for Crimea is still going on because thousands of Crimean Tatars are dreaming about Crimea, about liberation of Crimea, same as Ukrainians. And Ukrainians and Crimean Tatars are extremely close. So let me show you what is cheburek. Unique dish of Crimean Tatars, and the tradition is that on the first day after Ramadan, chebureks are fried in every house, and the smell is so intense and so good that you just want to enter the house and eat it. But because Crimean Tatars are deeply hospitable and welcoming people, the first cheburek usually goes and is given to the dog, because the dog also smell it, want it, but they can't tell you that they want to eat it. So it goes to the dog first. Cheburek is basically a deep fried turnover. And yeah, usually the most famous filling for it is ground meat. And I'm very excited now because I'm going to eat it now. Life is good. That's the end of this video, and I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video and learned something new. Let me know in the comments what was the most interesting part of the video for you, or what made you excited, hopefully. And like and subscribe for more episodes, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.